So we move to item 8, Hornby Library Customer Services and the Southwest Leisure Centre Options Report. Would Mike Mora like to come forward and present the Community Board view, and could Gary come forward as well?
Thank you, Leanne and councillors. No doubt you've heard the petition, and we did have an extraordinary meeting on Saturday the 12th, and the outcome of that meeting is before us today, and the Community Board decided to approve Denton Park option 1, and also that the staff work closely with all sports clubs in the area, particularly the Hornby Cricket Club, in relation to the possibility of relocating from Denton Park, and that the concerns expressed over community safety and traffic management are noted, and staff be asked to work to address these matters in particular. So, as you know, we certainly do want a new library service centre and aquatic centre in the southwest of Christchurch. Don't get me wrong, we certainly want it. We've been waiting for many years for this. So what we're presenting with you today, is the outcome of our meeting on the 12th. Is there any questions?
I think that's pretty straightforward. That's wonderful, thank you. Yanni?
Thank you. I just was interested in the public submissions. Just from reading it, it seems that the majority were in favour of Kyle Park.
Correct.
And also Sport Canterbury, I noted, made a submission in favour of Kyle Park. Now, obviously, we haven't had the hearings. Can you just give me any understanding around why Sport Canterbury view? I don't know if they appeared.
I don't think that's a question for the Community Board chair to answer. He's here to present the report of the Community Board. It's not for him to assess the individual.
Well, I just wondered if they'd heard from Sport Canterbury, if the board had heard from Sport Canterbury,
perhaps
and
Gary
what their rationale was.
Perhaps Gary could answer that question.
Actually, Councillor Hanson, Sport Canterbury were in favour of Denton. And when we spoke to them, they thought from an overall view of sports facilities that could be provided, they initially had indicated that Kyle was their preference, but after looking at the costs of remediating the land and looking at everything, they came back with a view that Denton was their preferred option for the sports groups in that area.
Sorry, just so I'm clear, so the feedback that we've got, where people have been recorded as a submitter and have given their preference, you're saying that that's not accurate to what their preference is?
There was an update which may not have got into that document. It should have, but I apologise if it hasn't. But I have an email from Sport Canterbury indicating that after looking at everything again, Denton is their option.
Okay, and I guess following up from that, and final question really is, how many other people, in terms of that submissions, in that document that we've got, have got a different view than what's recorded?
They were the only ones who came back before the meeting on the 12th. There's obviously been a lot of people come back after the meeting of the 12th, but for the timeline for the submissions, Sport Canterbury were the only ones that came back after reviewing it again with a change.
Sarah? David?
I just want to clarify something that Yanni asked. He mentioned a majority. I'm just looking at the document. It doesn't seem like any of the options got a majority, like over 50%. Mm-hmm. Like there was one option that got more feedback than the others, but yes, none of them got a majority. That's right?
Well,
none of them were over 50%. No.
Thank you. David?
Thank you. The petition that was presented earlier referred to the deed of gift from the Denton family. I note in the recommendation that we talk about the proposed use being inconsistent with the current reserve classification, etc., how far have we gone into looking into the deed of gift and whether we're consistent with the intentions or desires of the donor?
The deed of gift,
hang on a minute, sorry, I think that's a question to staff, not a question to the chair.
I might slide away and ask either John or someone from up the back who knows that better. Lee, where's she gone?
The hot seat. The bequest basically has resulted in the reserve status as we know today. All 3 sites that were shortlisted have the same issues to overcome, so they all have a reserve status. So it's the bequest resulted in the reserve status that we need to look at today if option 1 is selected.
So are you saying that once we incorporate a gifted piece of land into reserve status, the reserve status overrides the donor's wishes, or?
It is the reserve status that we need to. That's all I can say. We okay. Do you want it? Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Hot. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, the component of the proposal that's driving a change to the classification of the reserve is actually the library component. So there will need to be a change. There will need to be a public hearing following submissions on all of these sites.
Right.
I wonder if I could add...
No, I really don't want to have commentary. This is a technical, legal question around the status of the gift.
Oh yes, but I want to add that
honestly, I don't want comment from the community board other than to represent the view of the community board. So
I am actually, because there's what I want to say,
Helen.
All right,
Helen, I'm sorry, but it is not your right to come to the council meeting and debate any issues.
I'm not
This
debating.
is a legal technical question which has been asked and answered.
Okay.
Dion.
Cool. I just wanted to ask a question. Was the community board aware of the families from the petition that we've just heard? Has the community board been aware of the family when you did your consultation?
Yes. Not until...
Yes or no?
No.
Can I add there?
No, look, please.
No, we weren't. At the time we made the call on the 12th of August, we weren't aware of it, but we had asked on the 25th of June, could the staff clarify if there was a gifting process, and we were told it couldn't be found. And then it has been found.
Look, it's really unhelpful to provide opinion at this stage because I think that that people have worked incredibly hard to get to this point. Glenn?
Thank you. Mine's an entirely different question. Just over, I noticed 4.2.2, page 46, probably to Gary. Just the Kyle Park option would reduce the deliverable scope by 22%. So when we're looking at this whole joined up project, what approximately would that look like? What are you looking at, going to Kyle Park? What do you stand to lose?
Oh, okay. So, there's some drawings in there with an indicative massing what the building could look like. That's probably the difference. Look, to be honest with you, it's really hard because we're in the first stage of this. So there's a rough idea of what this building could look like. I really couldn't tell you what would come off it other than the $9 million approximately to remediate the land would have an effect on what can go on top.
The asbestos was dumped by Christchurch City Council onto
Excuse me,
Park.
where's that coming from? It's not appropriate to yell from the back of the chamber, thank you. Mike?
Thank you. So one of the things I did notice in the consultation document that obviously if Kyle Park was going to be the
preferred location, there would be a reduction in the size to 25%. And we do know that 22%, and we do know that there's quite a number that supported Kyle Park, and again the most support of all the other parks. So therefore they're actually accepting potentially a reduction in the size of that facility. If we put that reduced facility onto Denton Park, would we retain the fields?
Yes. Yes.
Yep.
No, I think...
Well,
The answer is yes.
Would you?
You're dreamers.
So, Anne?
Just noticing, thank you, just noticing with the submitters, the list for all of the preferred sites, we have 89 individuals for Kyle Park and 73 individuals for Denton Park, and then we have groups that have been represented by a submission. Have you got any ideas of the numbers that are actually involved here with the groups that have been represented here?
We haven't had hard copy of those numbers. It has been suggested that it could be in quite large numbers with some of the trust workers that are working in the community, and if you incorporate the views of Hornby High School. But the feedback I'm getting is Hornby High School students haven't really been given the opportunity to have an opinion, but the Board of Trustees has on their behalf. So I don't know how accurate those numbers would be with respect.
Andrew.
Thank you. Kyle Park, a 22% reduction in the size of the facility. Noting the remediation that would be required to the land, I mean, obviously we've talked a little bit about the cost involved in that. Would there also be delays to the delivery of the project if it was done at Kyle Park, and what would the length of that delay be if there was?
Probably there's one clear point I want to make with Kyle Park. That's options 2 and 3. Firstly, it doesn't mitigate the potential issues with Kyle Park or resolve the contamination. It basically encapsulates about 10% of the park through the building and the car parking. So encapsulate the landfill, the old landfill, and the
other delay would be
it does offer a higher risk proposition. And to be honest, until we've done, because it's an old landfill site, no matter how much site investigation we completed, we'd never know all the risks. That's the reality. Kyle Park was an old quarry where they actually excavated the gravels up to undetermined levels and then basically filled it with waste. So its best form in many ways is as a managed park. We do see people building on landfill. It's definitely possible, but it definitely offers a higher risk proposition to the council.
So there is a risk of delay that exists at Kyle Park that doesn't exist at Denton Park?
Which I can't quantify at the moment.
Very good. Oh, thank you. Pauline.
What would the reduced facility look like on Kyle Park? What would they lose? Would it just be a smaller size?
Can you just refer to the page?
I actually thought there was the same question as I answered for the other councillor.
Yeah, page 51 of the report.
It's basically small. The hub and everything. Yeah.
You'd lose your paddling, your learner swimming pool area. You'd lose a significant area of library, and you would lose an area of community board space as well.
So we'd just bring the whole thing down equally.
Shrink it. But both options, Councillor Cotter, have got
page 51's got a very graphic expression of the difference.
They've got areas for expansion. Both options, even the full one that's being proposed, has still got options for expansion. So if it was to be the reduced one, there's still the capacity to expand on both of those options, if and when there's money available to expand them.
Right, well, thank you very much. Right, so, well, in order to get this debate going, I'll move that the council adopt the staff recommendations, seconded by Andrew. Is there any discussion?
Can I move an amendment?
Yes, you can.
That the size of the facility is to be additional to what's up there, just additional to the motion, that the size of the facility is reduced by 22% to allow the sports fields existing on Denton Park to remain.
Do we have a seconder for that? There doesn't appear to be a seconder, so it's failed for want of a seconder. Okay, debate. Yanni.
I just wanted to check a process question. If some of us wanted to support Kyle Park, should we foreshadow that as a motion if this is lost and ask that you put...
the reduced size.
Yeah, put one separate. Or happy to move an amendment now? So,
no, it's not an amendment, okay, it's an alternative. So foreshadow that Kyle Park is a foreshadowed motion if it's lost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
David.
Yeah, just for the process, I assume that this whole process will go to a hearing.
It's been to the community board. The community board have made a recommendation to the council to accept this.
There's no hearing following this?
They've had their public submissions. There will be hearings under the Reserves Act, sorry.
Yeah.
So there will be hearings under the Reserves Act, yes.
But it will only be considering the Denton Park proposal?
Yes, if
this is
that is carried today, that is the next step in the process. All right? Okay, I'll open it up for debate. I'll put the motion. Well, I'm happy to speak if nobody else is. Okay, well, Yanni, I'll take you first.
I was going to let one of the local councillors introduce it, but I just wanted to say that I really appreciate all the work that's gone on behind this project. You know, there is an irony around these facilities being the location being quite contentious when there's other parts of the city that have a perfect location who are still waiting, but we'll address that at another time. But for me, just looking at the submission, I think it was quite clear that the majority favoured Kyle Park, even if it was at a reduced option. I am concerned to hear that the family who gave Denton Park to the city have raised the concerns that they have, and I take on board those concerns and think, looking at the majority of submitters being in favour of Kyle Park, the concerns from the people who gifted Denton Park to the city for the purpose of which it's used, then my preference would be option 2, and that's why I've foreshadowed, or I will foreshadow that I will not be supporting Denton Park. I will be supporting Kyle Park with a reduced build, as has been, I think, presented to us. So I want to see this facility go ahead in the Hornby area. I just think respecting the democratic process and respecting the intent of why the land was gifted to the city in the first place, Denton Park is the wrong place. And finally, I do think as a city that we do have a moral responsibility to clean up Kyle Park at some stage, whether we do it now or leave it for future generations, I think is a choice that we can make today. And my preference would be that we do it today so that current generations can enjoy it. You know, that is something we should take responsibility for, the mess that has been made there. We've done amazing work, I think, at QE2 for a lot less than the cost that's been presented in this report. So I think there would be creative, new ways of dealing with that issue at Kyle Park to remediate it that would be cost effective, that would, I think, lead to a good outcome. We clean up a site that's contaminated, we get a facility that the majority of the submitters have asked for in the area that they've asked for it, and we respect the people that gifted us Denton Park to start with. So that's why I'll be voting against Denton Park and for Kyle Park option 2. Thank you. Ask that you put those separate.
Yeah. Dion?
Yeah, cool. I just want to sort of echo a little bit of what Yanni was saying, so I won't be supporting Denton Park purely because of the information that I've received recently around the family stuff. And the protection of the natural environment, beauty of the countryside, emphasis on the retention of open space and outdoor recreation activities. I just do feel that Denton Park, with the intensification of development around Hornby, is a great open space for the community that gives a public amenity value to having that open space and the green that you can see along the road corridor there. So from that point of view, I won't support Denton Park because I don't think it's gone deep enough, the investigation has gone deep enough into addressing the issues, and I just don't feel comfortable with the amount of disharmony, I suppose, this has created within that community to actually be able to support this decision today.
Vicky.
For the last 4 years, we have been trying to get the money on to the budget for the sports facilities in the Southwest Leisure Facility. It's been an interesting and rocky road to get that money there. We have now done the consultation. Let me just point you to what has actually come through. No one park has a majority support. There are issues with every park. And the Community Board, at its meeting, 5.5-hour meeting on Saturday the 12th of August, first looked at the option of delaying this and getting more information on Kyle Park. The difficulty with Kyle Park is a massive $9 to $10 million difficulty of putting $9 to $10 million into the ground and burying it. It means that the people of Hornby and Southwest get $9 to $10 million less of great recreation facilities that will last them for the next 30 to 40 to 50 years. And let's just look at who's actually submitted. Canterbury Track Cycling came along and said they wanted it on Denton Park. Rugby and cricket didn't. We're very clear on that. Cricket actually at the meeting on the 12th said that they would be happy to completely move out of Denton Park. I don't know if that's still their retained view, but that is what they submitted. You'll notice that there are a number of other organisations who are in favour of Denton Park. Hornby High School Board of Trustees, for example, the Community Care Trust, and a range of quite a large number, the Community Development Network Trust that deals with young people in the area. At Denton Park, in terms of the family, we've heard from the grandnephew. The land was gifted for recreation facilities. A swimming pool and indoor recreation facilities are recreation facilities. Recreation facilities extend beyond...
Excuse me, I'm not going to have councillors who are perfectly entitled to speak in this environment without interruption from people who are not entitled to speak during the debate. Thank you.
The facilities that we're looking at are recreation facilities. It is really important in Hornby that we have a facility that people can swim in, that kids can learn to swim in. That disappears at Kyle Park. We want the same sort of community facilities that we see, for example, at Te Hapua in Hallsville, and every time you go in there, there's a yoga class or a Pilates class or some other class of things that I've never even heard of or participated in. But they look like great fun and they're definitely recreational. There are many, many sorts of recreation options available to the community, and I appreciate that some clubs are impacted. I appreciate that the rugby club loses a field and would have to be, and the budget has been provided such that that can be provided elsewhere, and to upgrade the field at Denton. I also appreciate that cricket, who said on Saturday that they wouldn't mind shifting completely, may not want to do that, and they may want to stay there. They can do that, and their facilities can stay there. They would need to move one field. There is, as I understand it, 4 cricket teams, part of the Hornby Cricket Club. I may be wrong on that, but that was my latest information, that there were 4 cricket teams. And I think that what we need to think about is what we're doing that will last 30 to 40 years for Hornby and for the Southwest. Is the facility safe? Does it feel like you could let your kids walk to it? Would it work such that you could go and have a swim, you could do your 3D printing at the library, you could have a computer game at the library, you could maybe even get a book, and then you could go and have meet your family for lunch at the mall. Is it good, safe walking distance? What was the crime prevention through environmental design report. It recommended Denton Park. Now, I know that this is not what the people in the room here want, but there are a lot of other people in the southwest of Christchurch who are desperate to get a facility that allows their kids to have a swim, that allows their kids to enjoy the facilities of a library, that allows the community to meet and to have a great time, and that there is more recreation options than the ones that were opposed to Denton Park. The really big difficulty I have as both a ratepayer and a councillor is taking $10 million or $9.5 million of other people's money and burying it into the ground so that I can put foundations down for a pool library facility. The difficulty with Kyle Park is that it is an old landfill site. The estimate of a quarter of the cost going into the ground so that we can build the facility there only remediates the ground on that site. It doesn't deal with the rest of Kyle Park at all. If you disturb asbestos and all sorts of things, then the cost of that is very, very high. QE2 is a completely different example. It is not an old pit. And I think we need to realise that there are a whole lot of things that we need to make the hard calls on. Now, I would love to go with all the people in the room and say I'm totally in favour of taking $10 million from all the ratepayers of Christchurch and just burying it. But I am not in favour of us making a decision that takes away from the people of Hornby and the southwest, who for so many years have not had a pool or great facilities in their area at all, or a community centre or a great place where you can have that amazing community feel that Hornby needs. And I'm just not willing to say $10 million less of facility is okay for an area that desperately needs a brilliant facility which can be provided at Denton Park. The issue of well, intriguingly, Warren Park only received, I think, 14% of the public vote. Warren Park is a great deal closer Warren Park received, as I understand it, 14 or 16%. Everybody largely wanted co-located facilities. We know that. That's great. Warren Park was the least preferred. To say that the majority of people are opposed to Denton Park, the interesting thing about any of these parks is that the majority of people are opposed to them, actually, if you look at the numbers. So it is a hard call, and I know that the community board struggled. They went through the option of Kyle, they went through the option of Warren, and then they arrived at the option of Denton Park for a variety of reasons. And key amongst that is that Denton Park is, I know it's well loved, and I know that green space means a great deal, but it is a very good, safe location to build an awesome facility in the southwest of Christchurch. And the other option of Warren Park was not supported by the community. The facility at Kyle Park, literally you bury $10 million. Now, I'm not willing to ask anybody to bury $10 million of their facilities and of their money, and I'm not willing to ask an 8-year-old or a 6-year-old in Hornby to do without what we think would be, and what everybody else seems to think, is the necessary standard of great community facilities for the next 40 to 50 years, because we couldn't agree on a location. We fought so hard to get this money for the southwest. We so need to make a decision. There is still a opportunity for people to actually talk about the reserve status. Each of these parks is affected by the Reserves Act. Each of them is affected in the same way. Each of them will have to go through that hearings process. So having listened to all of the debate on Saturday and much more on Facebook and everywhere else, would have originally supported it on the Hornby High School site, but of these three options, we tried that. We couldn't get the Ministry of Education or NZTA across the line, but of these three options that are before us today and which have been consulted on, I think the only tenable option is Denton Park.
Thank you. Sarah?
Just quickly, because Vicky's covered most of everything. My one initially was going to be to clarify that majority, and that the majority were against every site. A majority is 50%. There is no consensus from the community on this one, and consultation is one factor that councillors take into account. It is an important one, and it is one that informs our decision making, but not by sheer weight of numbers every time. It's through the quality of the submissions, the points that they make, and it may not always be the most popular that is the correct decision. And that's part of actually what democracy is. So people elect us to represent the wider interests of the city, not just those for a small specific area. And if we made all of our decisions based on a popular vote and a survey online, then actually that wouldn't, the most organised, the most well-resourced group in the community would win every time. And that's not how a democratic decision process works. We're elected to make the decisions in the best interests of the city, and I agree with Vicky that that burying $9 or $10 million when it's not necessary, when that could be spent on an amazing community facility, is definitely the way to go. Thank you.
Thank you. David?
Involved a long time in trying to get facilities in the eastern suburbs. I do appreciate the support that was given to getting that up and running. In this case, it's quite unusual that you've got three sites to consider, and all of them have some issues. But I think the overriding factor that I think needs to be considered here is the actual provision of facilities. The southwest, following the earthquakes, has experienced a huge amount of growth, and is still doing so. Putting a facility on Kyle Park, I think at this stage you were looking at a reduction in the size of the facility of 22% right from the word go. I'm probably looking from the angle of how can we best provide the maximum facilities for the area, for the size of the population for our city. And as I think Sarah pointed out a few moments ago, some decisions at times can't be the most palatable one, but I think in the end we need to be looking at the best bang for our bucks to a degree, and how can we provide the most sizable facility for the budget that we've got, and serve the community in the best possible way in terms of the size of the facility that we're providing. So with a degree of reluctance, I think I am going to support this motion, not a degree of reluctance in that term, but a degree of reluctance from some of the people that are obviously opposed to Denton. But I think we need to look wider and look at the size of facility that we're able to provide and how we can best serve that community. I'm sure some of the other sporting codes that may be affected can be accommodated in other ways, so I will support the motion that is before us today.
Andrew?
Thank you. I'm a big believer in grassroots democracy. I'm a big believer in decision making at the local level. As my colleagues around the table know, I'm a stickler for process, and I'm also a big believer in meeting community expectations, and they're some of the issues that we're actually considering here today. The community board have done a huge amount of work, staff have done a huge amount of work, the community board and the community have been hugely engaged in this issue, and I acknowledge all of that. I think it's important to note that considering a community board recommendation, my default on that, because of those beliefs I talked about when I opened what I'm saying, is that I take the community board's recommendation very seriously, I look at it positively, and I consider that on its merits, and that's exactly what I've done here. This has been through a robust process. There's been an engagement process. The community board have heard from submitters. The community board have sat for what I understand was a protracted amount of time to arrive at their recommendation. And they reached a majority recommendation, which is what we're considering today. I think it's important to note that a submissions process is not a referendum, it's not an election. The number of submitters that submit in favour of or against a particular option, yes, that's one of the things that we take into account, but that's not everything we take into account. As a council, we've got a responsibility to consider costs, we've got a responsibility to consider outcomes, we've got to consider the expectation of the community, which has been raised through various long-term plan and annual plan processes, in this case over a long period of time, and in this case in a community which needs a good quality facility in an area of high growth, in an area of need, a facility which is going to be fit for today and which is going to be fit for the future. And it's for those reasons that I find it impossible to consider a facility which has got a reduced scope by 22%, which doesn't meet the expectations that have been raised for this community, and I find it impossible to consider an option which is going to cost a significant amount more to actually deliver less, and where there's a risk of delay which doesn't exist at Denton Park. And that's the reason that I'm happy to be seconding the motion that we've got in front of us today.
Thank you. Jimmy?
Thank you. I remember during the community board extraordinary meeting on 12th of August, I particularly emphasize no matter what kind of option we make a decision, some of the residents or group happy, some of them may be disappointed, unhappy. However, as an elected member, as the councillor and community board, we have to review all those possible options and listen to all those submissions. Then we make the decision. This decision is my view. Let's benefit for the wider the Hornby and the southwest the area. So in that committee, I make a decision is go to the option 1, Denton Park. However, I would like to remind our mayor and my fellow councillors, the community board recommendation slightly different from the original staff recommendation, because we move the paragraph 4 and the paragraph 5, and these two, the paragraph was unanimous by all the community board members, not any community board against. The paragraph 4 is regarding to the staff working closely with all sports clubs in the area, particularly in that day. We listen to the Hornby, the rugby, the football club, as well as Hornby cricket, the Hornby cricket club, regarding to the possibility relocating from the Denton Park. This community board unanimous support. The other one, we listen to the submission, particular concern the community facility and the traffic management issue. We also request the staff need to particular to emphasize this area. That's solvable. After the committee meeting, I got quite a few the email from the Hornby area, quite a few. But I would like to briefly read out two the email, one from the individual, one from the group. I just want to read out quickly. I'm not sure whether, Chair, may I read out?
Do not take instruction from the back of the room. You're perfectly welcome to refer to an email.
May I read? Yes. Oh, okay, thank you. The one is the couple. They told me that, Mr. Chen, we wish to show our support for the development of Denton Park in Hornby, incorporating a new library swimming pool. As a residents, we live in Hornby for 44 years. We firmly believe This project is a benefit to the whole community and not a select domain for two sports bodies. This individual, I also got quite a few from the community group. I would like to read out just one group from the Hornby Community Care Center. In particular, I would like to briefly read out the 2 paragraphs. As for the new facility, we know there are many in the community looking forward to having full council services available back in the Hornby. There has not been full service since 1989, when Paparua District Council was disbanded and moved from the Clark Tower building. And the new swimming pool, which was promised when the Sackburn pool closed over 10 years ago. This is quite serious. And also recently I read the last term, the council, the Community Housing Economic Development Committee, the master schedule. The new Hornby, the Library Service Center will be open in July 2017. It means last month we opened, but why we have the delay? Because during the so lengthy the consultation, etc. This might very sorry about it. I'm the local councillor. It's very hard for me. But we need to go on and consider all those wider the Hornby and the southwest area. I just want to, we can working together to go on, benefit for the people, for the wider Hornby area. This is my view. Yes.
Okay. Phil.
Thank you. Look, I'll try and be brief, but I think this is an extremely important issue. There's no question at all that Hornby deserves a decent civic centre, not a reduced one. And it's a growing area population-wise, probably the fastest growing area in the city. It's important that council get this right. And staff have advised us around Kyle Park that in fact there's a high risk of the contamination or the extent of it there, and as the staff actually wisely said, the risks are unknown. And so while a figure of 9 or 10 million may be what's required, in fact it may well be a lot more than that if Hornby is to have the multi-use centre that it deserves. So while there's some loss of sporting area from Denton Park, there are clear alternatives in the report at Waikola Park, and clearly council will be supporting those. I want to commend the community board in terms of standing strong. The vote, I understand, was 6-3. I hope that in fact the community board does have some strong leadership, so in fact the recommendations that Jimmy Chen referred to can in fact be supported across the wider community.
Thank you. So I will put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Yeah, well, yeah, but okay, it's just one. So I will put one first on its own. So I will put that motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Can you record, Yanni Johansson opposed? And now I'll put the balance of the resolution. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. That's carried. Thank you.